Welcome to Hope is Here. My name is Greg Horn. We're continuing our conversation about how to develop patience. And we've been basing it off James chapter 5, verses 7 and 12, and just looking at when we should be patient. And I shared three situations yesterday. One, when circumstances are uncontrollable. Two, when people are unchangeable. And three, when problems are unexplainable. So if you missed yesterday's 14-minute program, really want to encourage you to go to our website, hopeishere.today, and check out that 14-minute program. Also want to remind you, we have a YouTube channel. Want to encourage you to go check out our YouTube channel. Just type in Hope is Here and my name, Greg Horn, H-O-R-N. Hope you'll subscribe to the YouTube channel. And most of our programs are available on the YouTube channel that you can watch or at least listen to. So thank you for so many people that are already subscribing. If you're blessed by the programs, I hope that you'll leave a comment. It blesses us, is a great encouragement to us, and we would greatly, greatly appreciate it. Well, I'll talk to you today about why be patient. Yesterday we talked about when I should be patient. Well, now I want to talk to you about why I should be patient, and I want to give you three reasons. The first one is because God is in control. God is in control. You may not feel that right now, but I want to remind you that God is in control. James said in chapter 5, verse 8, "You too must be patient. Take courage, for the coming of the Lord is near." And I love in those three verses in James chapter 5, verses 7 through 12, James talked about that the Lord's coming is near and that Jesus is coming back. And friends, that's the ultimate proof that God is in control. Nothing can stop that. Do you know the Bible actually talks more about Jesus' second coming when he comes back to judge the world than it does his first coming? Wow. I'll say that one more time. The Bible talks more about Jesus' second coming when he comes back to judge the world than it talks about his first coming. I mean, friends, I want to remind you that God is in control of history. And when you break down the word history, his story, that's what history is. It's God's story. Unfortunately, I think a lot of times it's Greg's story. And yet I have to be reminded when I'm preparing these talks for Hope is Here and when I preach at Gardenside Christian Church in Lexington that, you know what? I'm not in control. God's in control, and this is his story, not Greg's story. He's got a plan for all of history. He's got it all planned out. Everything is on schedule. Nothing is late. And it's all moving toward a climax one day when Jesus returns. So God is in control, and God's purpose for your life is greater than any problem you're facing right now. Remember, my friends, God is in control today. Helen Steiner Rice said, "Teach me to let go, dear God, and pray undisturbed until my heart is filled with inner peace and I learn to know your will." I mean, we talked about Job yesterday, and wow, he persevered, and God's timing is perfect. God's never late, and some of you I know are experiencing a real delay right now, but I want to remind you that God's delays never prevents his purpose. I'll say it again. God's delays never prevent his purpose. A second way that reason why we can know that we can be patient is that God rewards patience. God rewards patience. In James chapter 5, verse 11, James says, "We give great honor to those who endure under suffering." Once again, Job, the first 37 chapters of that book in the Old Testament says, Job's story wasn't really good. Then God shows up on the scene. Can you imagine waiting? You're reading a book, 37 chapters, all that time, but God then shows up and intervenes and starts talking to Job and basically says, "Hey, where were you when I was putting the stars in place and the oceans? And I'm the one that gave you breath this morning." And Job's like, "Oh my goodness, yes, you are Lord and God, and I shouldn't doubt you in that." And by the end of the book of Job, chapter 42, it says that the Lord restored the fortunes of Job when he prayed for his friends. The Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. So friends, it pays to be patient. It pays to be patient. And I love that God eventually restored all that Job lost, but it started when he started praying for others, his friends, his family. Maybe that's what God's asking you today. And friends, it's not always a financial reward. I mean, there's all kinds of rewards when we're patient. Number one, your character grows. Number two, you get along better with people. Number three, you're more happy, which is good for your physical and mental health, right? When you're patient, a lot of times you're able to reach your goals. And there are just so many benefits to being patient. God rewards it. You'll be honored by others. You'll hear somebody say, man, he's really a patient person, or, she's so patient. And I know I've had to work on that area and develop that area in my life, because most of my life I've not been patient. It's still a struggle for me with my type A personality. But God's been chipping away at that. He's teaching me to be more patient and to trust him. And I want to remind you today that God rewards patience, not just on this side of eternity, but also on the other side. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 5, verses 11 and 12, "Blessed are you when people insult you or they persecute you, and they falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." Friends, I don't like being persecuted or made fun of, but you know what? It's been going on for over 2,000 years for followers of Jesus. It went for his followers, for the prophets in the Old Testament, and it can still happen to us today. But you know what, friends? Realize that this is a dress rehearsal for heaven. This life is. Okay, we are just preparing for heaven. And these trials and tribulations we're going through, it's all going to be temporary. And just keep your eyes on Jesus. Know that he will help you get through. He'll help you endure. And a lot of times even help you prosper as you surrender your one and only life to him. But, it's one of those kind of strong desires in our life that when we hurt, we want to get even with people, right? We want to retaliate. We want to get revenge. We want to take matters into our own hands. When we get criticized, we want to criticize back, right? If you get insulted, you're like, you know what? I'm going to insult somebody back. Revenge, retaliation are the natural thing, but that's the opposite of patience, friends. Say that again. Revenge, retaliation are the natural thing when we're hurt or insulted, but that's the opposite of patience. James says that the next time someone criticizes you, before you strike back, think about this. Is it worth giving up the reward I'm going to have in heaven? I'm going to enjoy that a whole lot longer than the temporary pleasure of revenge. So you need to be patient because God is in control and he's going to record patience. And number three, because God is working things out. God is working things out. Often behind the scenes, we don't see it. God's at work, but we don't necessarily always get to see him at work. And I'm so thankful, friends, that, God is always working on our behalf. James said in chapter 5, verse 11, you know about Job, a man of great endurance. You can see how the Lord was kind to him at the end, for the Lord is full of compassion and mercy. God was working all the time. Job didn't know it. He didn't know what was going on. I mean, my goodness, all of a sudden, just out of the blue, his land's destroyed, all his livestock, his children all die. Then even his physical health got bad. It was so bad he even had sores on the bottom of his feet. It was hard to walk. His wife was the one family member left. She said, why don't you just curse God and die? His friends doubted. Like, Job, what did you do? And yet, friends, God was working. And here we are talking about over 2,000 years later. God told Satan before he allowed Satan to do all those things to Job, because Job said, you know what? Yeah, he loves you right now, God, but that's because you blessed him with all these wonderful things, and wonderful children and wife, and man, he's got it all. Why wouldn't he worship you and praise you? Let's see what happens when he loses all that stuff. And God said, you know what? My son Job will still love me. He'll still trust me. And it's true, he did. But it was 37 chapters of reading and watching Job's life play out before God showed up. And so I want to encourage you today that a delay does not mean a denial. I want to say that again. A delay does not mean a denial. If you've been praying for an answer to prayer and you haven't gotten it yet, and maybe you think, God doesn't want to give that to me. No, friends, a delay is not a denial. We have to learn the difference between a no and not yet. That's huge. We have to learn the difference between a no and not yet. We want it and we want it now, but we got to be patient. God is at work even when we don't see what's going on. God was at work in Job's life even when he didn't know, why is this happening to me? I love the story of Philip Brooks, a famous pastor of the last century. One day he was in his office just kind of pacing the floor, and he was really frustrated. Somebody walked in and saw him doing this, and they asked, "What's the matter, Pastor?" And Philip Brooks said, "I'm in a hurry, and God isn't." Anybody else been there besides me? Yeah, we've all been there, right? I'm in a hurry, and God isn't. God says be patient because I'm working things out. While I'm waiting, God is working. I love that. While I am waiting, God is working. I need to remember that, and today maybe you need to remember that. Your hands may be tied, and the situation may be uncontrollable that you're dealing with, but it is not uncontrollable from God's viewpoint. So in advance, thank God that he's working things out. And Job gives the illustration of the farmer. When the farmer plants a seed, he's waiting for that seed. While he's waiting, God is working behind the scenes to cause that plant to sprout. He's creating the conditions so at the right time, in the right timing, it will be a harvest. The farmer waits, and while the farmer waits, God works. Philippians chapter 2, verse 13 says, God is at work within you. Maybe you can't see it today, friends, or maybe you don't feel it, but I want to remind you that God is working. Romans chapter 8, verse 28 says, and we know that in all things, God works things together. So in every circumstance of your life, God is working. Be patient. I don't know what kind of problem you may be having this week, but regardless of whatever problem you're going through, whether it's a financial challenge, a relationship issue, whether it's with family, a spouse, children, neighbors, work, or maybe it's a health challenge that you've got a health issue. God is working on that problem, friends, and we can be patient and trust him. So just in the final minute and a half I've got left with you, you probably want to know, well, what do I do while I'm waiting on God? Well, one, we wait expectantly, okay? We wait expectantly. Psalm 130, verse 5 says, I wait expectantly, trusting God to help me, for he has promised he would. Matthew chapter 9, verse 29 says, according to your faith, it will be done unto you. And then in Isaiah chapter 49, verse 23, it says, the Lord says, no one who waits for my help will be disappointed. So friends, keep hoping, trusting, and praying today. A second thing we can do while we're waiting is wait quietly. Wait quietly. James talked about don't grumble about each other, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged in James chapter 5, verse 9. And then he talks about later, my brothers and sisters, do not swear in verse 12. Sometimes when we're waiting, our mouth can kind of get critical and just not good, God-honoring, profanity, other things come out. And I want to remind you, Lamentations chapter 3, verse 26 says, it's good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. And the third and final thing that we need to do, okay, when we are waiting, all right, we need to wait confidently. Micah chapter 7, verse 7 says, I will wait confidently for God. Rick Warren says, when you've got a problem that's unexplainable, a person who is unchangeable, a circumstance that is uncontrollable, then wait confidently. God is working. So I want to remind you today, friends, that Psalm 37, verse 7 says, be still in the presence of the Lord and wait patiently for him to act. Maybe that's something you need to write on today, Psalm 37, verse 7. Be still in the presence of the Lord and wait patiently for him to act. My name's Greg Horn, and this is Hope is Here.